Welcome to Community Chats. I'm Brenda González, Director of Community Relations for UW-Madison. I'm so excited to introduce this series that will explore different perspectives on community and university connections. Developed in the spirit of the Lamar Phillips Award, which recognizes outstanding contributions to campus community partnerships. Community Chats features local leaders at the forefront of social change in Madison. To kick off this series, we're lucky to have Emily Auerbach joining us today. Emily is an award-winning UW professor of English, as well as co-director and founder of UW Odyssey Project. The Odyssey Project provides life-changing humanities courses for adults facing economic barriers to college. Emily is also the co-host of Wisconsin Public Radio's University of the Year, author of a book about Jane Austen, and winner of numerous teaching, arts, and humanitarian awards. Hi, Emily. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Brenda. I'm so happy to be here with you.
So exciting. I'm so glad that you were able to join us. We are looking forward to our conversation today. Emily, wondering if you can share with us a little bit about the work that you have done with the university and Madison community throughout the years. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about how the Odyssey idea came about.
Sure. Well, I've been an English professor at UW-Madison for almost 40 years now, charged with the Wisconsin idea, which I love. And that's the idea of bringing humanities and literature programming to non-traditional students, whether that's on public radio, as you mentioned, or teaching in prison, in retirement centers, at the back of grocery stores. I love bringing the university's riches to a wider audience. The Odyssey Project, of all the things I've done over the last almost 40 years, is the one I'm the most passionate about. We're in our 18th year of providing a free jumpstart course in the humanities for adults near the poverty level. And it's very dear to my heart because both my parents came out of poverty through Berea College in Kentucky, which gave them a free education and broke a cycle of generational poverty. So for me, the Odyssey Project, which started in 2003, has been life-changing, not just for the students in the program, but for me as well.
I love every time that you say that, Emily. Can you tell us a little bit more about, as you're saying, that has changed the life for me and my family. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
In terms of my own family background, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, my mother was born in Appalachia with no running water, and no one in her family had gone to college. But a teacher who saw that she was an avid reader and a good student told her about Berea College in next door, Kentucky. And she arrived at Berea College with one skirt and two shirts. And if someone had said, now you must buy an expensive textbook, she would have had to go home. There just wasn't that extra money. My father was a refugee from Nazi Germany coming over to the United States as a child. His family lost everything. That's where my parents met and married. They were married 62 years until my mother's passing 8 years ago. And they both were absolute champions of the Odyssey Project because they saw in the students in our program the same transformational difference that they had experienced firsthand. And I think it also helped me when talking about poverty, because we have a mindset about who's poor in this country that sometimes makes it seem like it's their own fault or they were lazy or there's something. And I knew from my parents' stories that sometimes people just need to be given an opportunity and that they have all kinds of riches inside. One of my favorite quotes from an Odyssey student is one who said, "The Odyssey Project helped me unwrap my gifts and rewrite the story of my life." And I guess that's what I really think is my mother had gifts inside, and she was just waiting for a chance to unwrap those gifts and to change the trajectory of her life. And that's what we see year after year with the Odyssey Project.
That's right, Emily. I wonder if you can share a little bit about one of your students or a couple of your student stories, as you are saying, how you really understand that trajectory, that journey. So I wonder if you can share a couple of stories.
Sure. The problem is keeping it to two because we have over 500 graduates of the program, and each one has just a remarkable story. Good example might be Kina, who was in the Odyssey class of 2010. When she applied for Odyssey, she was homeless and sleeping on the floor of a barber shop with her infant son. The barber happened to be a graduate of our program. He told her about it. He was allowing her to sleep on the floor of his barber shop. And she now, after going through Odyssey and finding her voice and a sense of her future, went on to get a UW-Madison bachelor's degree. She has businesses of her own. She is a homeowner and landlord now, where she used to be homeless, and she is doing classes to promote wellness in the Black community. So Kina is a good example, and the UW even did this big billboard about her and a woman on the Odyssey, a good example of that transformation. Another story might be that of Stanley, who was wrongfully incarcerated. He started sketching in prison. And when he was in our class, in the class of 2007, I saw these doodles and said, Stanley, that's remarkable. Do you want to maybe draw some of the figures we're studying, like Frederick Douglass, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Socrates, etc.? So he did a whole series of sketches, got an art exhibit out of it, and went on to get a graphic design degree. And he now works full-time for the university as a graphic designer. He designs all sorts of materials and is a practicing artist. You can hear Stanley talking. He even uses the word trajectory in a video that we did of student voices. It shows Stanley doing his art and with paintings that he did.
That is so amazing. And as you said, remarkable. I'm excited to continue to hear the stories. And I know that we will to hear more stories. But coming back to the idea that Lamar Phillips, can you imagine him seeing all of these? It will be so amazing to hear his reactions. But in another way, I understand that a lot of your work is related to the work of Lamar Phillips. For those who may not be familiar with Lamar Phillips and his legacy, Lamar Phillips served as a special assistant to 2 UW chancellors and was director of community relations from 1996 to 2007. Lamar was known as a skilled ambassador between the university and the city and was deeply committed to key civic institutions and social causes. Emily, what is something that you think is important for people to know about the impact he had on UW and the broader Madison community, knowing and understanding that you are very familiar with his work?
Well, I also had the pleasure to meet Lamar when he was here. And one thing that I will say, because he was here during the time that I was trying to get the institutional approval to start the Odyssey Project, to get it off the ground when there was no track record that suggested it would succeed. I think what I admired about him is that he was passionate about social justice, about civil rights, about fairness, workers' rights, just making life better for everyone. And the really important thing to know about Lamar Phillips too is he was someone who could work behind the scenes without going for credit, without bringing a photographer and saying, "Look at me." He was someone who truly cared about other people and devoted his life to making the world better. So, he knew about the Odyssey Project and was supportive of it. I wish he could see how it has grown. We now have Odyssey, Odyssey Junior, Onward Odyssey, Odyssey Beyond Bars in the prison. The program has expanded in ways we never could have imagined. And I think that he would be extremely excited to know that. And I was proud to get the Lamar Phillips Award in his name because I know what he stands for.
Absolutely. I think it was 2017 that you received that award. So very excited that you're part of that legacy and that work. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit more about Odyssey Beyond Bars. I think is the newest program. Is that correct?
Yes. In 2015 or 16, somewhere in there, Jean Faraca, who's been involved in bringing the Odyssey Project to Madison because she had a guest on her radio show that had a program that it's somewhat modeled after. Jean Faraca started working in Wisconsin prisons with non-traditional materials from Odyssey for enrichment. Having the men in prison read Plato's Allegory of the Cave or have them write about it. And after a few years of doing that at Fox Lake and other places, we were lucky enough to have Peter Moreno join us. He's someone who worked on the Innocence Project in Seattle and as a practicing attorney and also on university prison education. And he has joined us as the director of what we're calling Odyssey Beyond Bars, bringing for the first time credit-bearing UW-Madison courses into Oak Hill Prison. We're now working to spread prison education into all the state prisons in partnership with other schools and with UW system. We're very excited about the transformation of power. And Kevin Mullen, my co-director, has been teaching writing. This is the second semester of doing that with men at Oak Hill Prison. And we're finding the same stories of transformation as they write about their lives.
Knowing how COVID-19 pandemic has impacted our community and you as the leader of Odyssey, can you tell us a little bit about how your work has looked like in the last few months or how it has changed?
Yeah, we were blindsided in March. We were teaching in person in South Madison in the partnership space, and suddenly we couldn't do that anymore when the pandemic hit. We discovered our students really face a technology access gap as well, because many did not have computers, they did not have Wi-Fi access, they did not have the skills they needed. So we were scrambling to deliver laptops and help them get connected with us so that we did finish our classes spring semester and even do our graduation ceremony with hundreds of people online. It is heartbreaking because Odyssey depends on hugs, on warmth, on lively discussions, on improvised acting scenes, on live music, on field trips. There's so many different parts of our program that we can't do online. But I'm very proud to tell you that this, the fall of 2020, we did all 4 parts of our program: Odyssey Junior with 56 children. We did alumni class, and we did the prison class, all remotely. And we're trying to just send that warmth and excitement and connection right through the computer screen. We have had to use more of our funds to help with basic needs because communities of color have been hit disproportionately hard by the pandemic, both in terms of their health and just financial worries, because there wasn't that safety net. We're already working with families at the poverty level, and now we have students laid off, not able to feed their families and struggling day to day. So luckily I had already set up a separate nonprofit to supplement what we do at the university so that we are able to help our students with basic needs. And we have a full-time social worker who's one of our alumni, Brian Benford, who is also helping to connect our students to the resources that are out there.
That is so impressive, Emily. I know that often you talk about wraparound services, and that really talks about the story that you and your team are able to provide. So I wonder if you can share a little bit about, what does that look like for your team?
Well, I should tell you, even before the pandemic hit, it was clear that, Socrates and Shakespeare and Martin Luther King, they're wonderful, but they don't put food on the table that day. And so I learned, for example, I had a student who broke his glasses and he couldn't see his homework. And with the university funding I had, I could buy him 20 more books he couldn't see, but I couldn't fix his glasses. And so what I did is take a leadership award, a check I had been given, and use that to start a separate nonprofit in 2009 that I can use to buy diapers, pay rent, fix glasses, do those things that sometimes are immediate needs that students face. All our team members have been kind of out on the front lines, making deliveries to students, helping them problem solve, trying to figure out what do we do if we've got a mother at home with 4 little kids and she's trying to connect to our program and there's no childcare available. So there's just so many problems, so many barriers and obstacles, but we're determined to help our students succeed and change their lives for the better.
That absolutely resonates with what I see at the South Madison Partnership. So I really appreciate that. And so this pandemic has brought to light more of what we knew of inequities. We are also facing not only the COVID-19 pandemic, but our country and our local community is also in the midst of social and racial justice movements. How would you say that this affects the work with your students and maybe more broadly of community university engagement?
Yes, well, 95% of students in Odyssey are students of color. And this summer, with the explosion of unrest over the police brutality, the George Floyd murder in particular, and just sort of bringing to light centuries of economic and racial injustice, I think has highlighted for me the importance of Odyssey more than ever, because we look at American history in a way that's not taught in the schools, looking at sort of the truth that sometimes gets hidden, and because we help our students find their voices. If you find your voice and your place in history, you start realizing, Frederick Douglass fought for the right to, be literate at a time when it was against the law to teach a slave to read and write. He fought for his escape and wrote this narrative that we read in class. We look at Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Langston Hughes and Lorraine Hansberry and many other figures, Maya Angelou. And I think as students read great works of literature, history, and philosophy, they also start demanding their own rights, and they start using their voices in ways that are important. So we had one of our alumni who ran for state senate. We have many that have been on the front line of the protests. We have students who have published editorials and have, I guess, taken sort of a front row seat in demanding change. And I just have to say that with the pandemic and with the racial injustice that's come to head in the summer of 2020, I feel more than ever that the Odyssey Project can play an important role in moving the needle towards college access and equity across the board.
I absolutely agree. And I'm so glad that you're able to share some of these stories, Emily, with us. I'm excited because there are so many people that are looking up to you. And as we begin to wrap up here, wondering if you would like to share a final closing story or thought about your work that can and will impact and inspire people that are working to create positive change. This is very important. Mentors like Lamar, Phillips, and like yourself, we want to hear more from you.
I think I'll mention Corey Saffold. He was in our class in 2006, so in the third year of the program. And when he found his voice and published an editorial in the State Journal called Education Must Trump Prison Time, he had it responded to by then Chief Justice Shirley Abrahamson at our graduation ceremony. And Corey just recently at a UW Board of Regents meeting, he's a regent on the Board of Regents, he talked about how that moment when the Chief Justice responded to something that he wrote made him aware of the power of his own words, the power of his own voice. And he said that he wouldn't be sitting there in Van Hise Hall with the other regents and the president of the UW system and chancellors listening in. He wouldn't be sitting there were it not for Odyssey, that Odyssey was the turning point in his life that made him go on to become a college student, a police officer, and on a journey to get a master's degree. And I think that, Corey's daughter graduated last year. His grandson, who's 5, was in our Odyssey Junior program. That illustrates the multi-generational impact of Odyssey. And, you said something about looking up to me, but I look up to the students. I admire their resilience, their courage, the power of their voices, and honestly, their generosity. They are giving back. Someone who was once a drug addict is now a counselor. A man in our program who was born in prison when his mother gave birth to him and died in labor, and he was in and out of prison. He's now a minister to men in prison. This is what I am so excited about, is that it's possible. We had one student in the program who was trying to recover from drugs. And as part of our program, she did an arts illustration of her life and saw it as a revolving door, where just as she was about to get out of the door, her friends still on drugs would drag her back around. And we've all been in a revolving door where you wonder, are you going to get trapped in there? And she said she never got out of that door because of these friends still on drugs. And she said after doing that project for Odyssey, that was what made her see her life in this metaphor. And then she changed it and she never went back on drugs. And I think we underestimate the power of the humanities, the power of human conversations, the power of exploring things together to change lives in meaningful ways. And I'm so excited to keep doing that, whether it's virtual or in person, one family at a time, just like mine was given this chance to break a cycle of poverty and find a new vision.
I know many of the graduates, alums from Odyssey, and I agree. They make our communities better. Emily, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your experiences. Thank you.
Thank you. And I hope that everyone goes to our Odyssey website, where there's a full-length documentary, there's short videos, there's newsletters featuring student voices. I would just have to say, please go meet our students, because they are an inspiration.
Agree. So for more information about Emily's work and the Odyssey Project, visit odyssey.wisc.edu. You can also find more Odyssey alumni stories or see more of the videos here. Stay tuned for our future community chats featuring previous winners of the Lamar Phillips Award. You can visit communityrelations.wisc.edu. I'm Brenda González, and this is Community Chats. Thank you.